Hi there, welcome to our channel. I'm Vic.
I'm Nick.
And we are MV Board Gaming. And today we're delighted to bring you the Kickstarter preview for Maul Peak. This is a game published by Pencil First Games. It's for 2 players, but if you have Skull Hollow, you can make it a 4-player game. Ages are 12 and up, and it is designed by Eduardo Baraf and Keith Mateka with illustrations by Dustin Faust. Nick and I are going to go through how you play, and then we're going to give our opinions.
All right, welcome to the table for a high-level overview of the game. Then I'll pass it over to Vic to go into detail with the Grizzar Heroes, and I'll be back to give a talk about the new Guardians. First off, let's talk about win conditions in this game. The Grizzar team is just going to win based on them eliminating the Guardian, and that's their board up here, as you can see kind of off the screen. You're just going to jump on them and start to try to eliminate abilities, and then ultimately hit every hit point on the monster in order to win. The Guardian player is going to win by either fulfilling a unique objective on their player board, or they can just eliminate all summoned heroes. So we're doing that by playing our main phases here. So the game is going to look like this. It's going to be playing a card. Both teams have that. They have their own deck. They can play a card from their hand. We'll get into the boards to show you how many starting cards these teams have, how many actions they have, and so forth. But you're going to either play a card. If you're the hero character, you can go ahead and intensify. That is an optional action as well if you're not going to play a card. That is simply discarding a card to either gain 1 rage or draw 1 more card. The Guardian can do something similar, but it's called Prepare, where they will discard a card to draw 2 cards. Optional actions, unlike Skull Hollow, you can spend Rage instead of Power with your hero team. What you do with that is you can summon heroes in this den board, which Vic's going to go over a little bit more detail. But that's how you spend Rage. You can also spend Rage with the ability of these Winter Beasts that you're going to pick at the beginning of the game, which one you would like. You can also spend Power if you are the Guardian, which you were familiar with in Skull Hollow. Spending power. So that is a familiar concept to you. You can do that as an optional action. Again, that does not take up one of your actions that is listed on your player board. So I'm going to pass it over to Vic.
Okay, taking a look here at the Grizzar Heroes. These guys have a player mat dedicated to them, just the same as the Guardian does. And this is really great because it's got the setup information at the bottom, and it has an overview of all your actions, a place for your rage to pool and a bank for it, as well as a depiction of how many cards for your hand limit and how many actions that the Grizzar Heroes can take. We'll start off with the setup, which is nicely written down at the bottom here of the player mat. And what you'll do is you're going to take 2 rage and put it right away into the bank. You don't got to wait in the pool. You can put the rage right away in the bank. Rage for the Grizzar Heroes is how they can spend actions for additional. They can spend the rage to do additional actions or purchase some of these heroes from the top here, but we'll get into that in just a moment. It is a distinct difference from the Foxen tribe of Skull Hollow. They use the power cubes, so they're using rage and they're using them in different ways. But the setup will put 2 rage there, and then you will take the Druid. So this is your Druid Grizzar, the little brown meeple, little cute bear. You'll put it in the keep space of the map. You will also choose one of these Winter Beasts. And these Winter Beasts, you're going to have a selection of one of them to start the game. The game does recommend that if you're a beginner, you play with the Snow Hare. And you'll notice that they have a number of different abilities at the bottom. So if you went with the Snow Hare, you'd be able to spend 2 rage to draw 2 cards. But there are other things that I'll let you explore for yourself. Different abilities where you can spend 3 rage to force the Guardian player to discard a random card, for instance. I mean, lots of different abilities you can have. And when you make your selection, you'll choose the matching card that has the health on it, and you'll put it out in front of yourself. So if I did the Snow Hare, I would pass the Snow Hare reference card over to my opponent, and that way my opponent can always see the ability that my snow hare is capable of. So I would pass that over, and I would keep the one with the heart so I can track the hit points on it, and also a reminder of how much rage I need to spend in order to do that action. So that's what I would do, and I would take that little Winter Beast meeple and place it in the keep as well. That meeple token may change, as this is a prototype. When a hero is eliminated in this Grizzar, when you're playing as the Grizzar characters, they actually go to the graveyard. So they don't actually get summoned again like the Foxen tribe does. But I will talk about that in just a moment when I go through the overview of actions. But just something to be aware of what that space is here. It's a graveyard for folks that became exhausted and their health was depleted. And this Grizzar Heroes will always play second. So they're going to go second turn. The Guardian's going to go first. But let's just talk very quickly about the actions that are available. First and foremost, as I mentioned before with reference to these heroes, you can summon and by paying the rage cost. So for instance here, this Barbarian, I would pay the 3 rage cost to summon this character and place them out. This is not an action, and it says on your player board it's a free action, but you're able to do that as long as you have the rage to pay for it. They come out and you will take their matching meeple here, so it's shown on the top left of what meeple belongs to that hero, and you can place them in any of these 3 spaces on your board. So just to start the game, you have to put them out here, but if you wanted to move them outside of the keep, you could put the here, or you can have them start here or there, wherever you choose. So that's one action you can do, is to summon one of the heroes available in the den, or you can move a hero unit. You can do the leap to move a hero unit up to the Guardian from its ground space. So if you are sharing a space with one of these Guardian tokens, you'll be able to actually jump up onto them, leap up, and start attacking them, which is one of your win conditions. You are going to want to get up on this Guardian, jump from place to place, and do melee attacks on these different action spaces so as to not only win the game, but prevent the Guardian from making some pretty nasty attacks on you or doing actions. So you can actually stop the Guardian's actions by jumping up onto that Guardian, doing the leap action, and performing a melee attack, which I'll get into the melee in just a moment. I wanted to add that you can also spend a rage token, and this is written on your player setup board. You can spend one of your rage to do an additional leap on top of the leap you already did. You can also go from the Guardian down to its ground space. If you didn't want to leap up, you can leap down as well. Now melee, I touched upon it, but it's pretty simple. You're going to deal a wound to the Guardian location occupied by the attacking hero unit, so you have to be on the space of the Guardian overlay here. You have to be on the space to attack that spot. And there's a magic. You can use the ability of a hero unit in play that uses magic. So for instance, the Herbalist here, if you had summoned him, at any time you can spend a magic action to gain 3 rage, which is a good way to accrue rage and ultimately spend it for additional bonus actions. Finally, you can discard a card to gain a rage token, and that would go immediately into your pool and move to the bank in the subsequent turn, so it doesn't become available right away. Or you can discard a card to draw a card. So perhaps you're trying to get a specific card in hopes of doing a specific series of actions. And what I'm talking about with the cards is this deck of cards. So the Grizzar Heroes have their own unique deck, and there's a variety of actions. You're going to shuffle them up and draw 4 as per your player card depiction. So you'll start yourself off with 4 cards, and you are going to get to play 3 of these every turn, because you have up to 3 actions. So you'll get to choose these. Some of them, double melee, you get to do a double attack, or they'll give you a choice. So you can choose to move, or you can choose to do the magic. You can't do both, but you'll choose the top or the bottom of the cards. And as I mentioned, you'll have up to 3 of these actions available to you, and then you'll pass it on to the other turn. You'll draw back up to your hand limit, have 4, and you'll pass it off to your opponent to take over. One final thing I will add is, in addition to the Winter Beast reference that you hand off to your opponent, you're also going to hand them off this handy reference that will tell them all the possible actions that you can do as a hero, and you're going to receive one from your opponent as well. So everyone's going to know what everybody's doing.
Let's go over the board and movement. It's a very key concept to this game. So if I were the Grizzar team here, starting from my keep spot, and I wanted to move to this square right here from my keep, I could accomplish that by moving slant right. Now there's 3 different cards that could accomplish that are in my hand. I can gain ground, which means I can move to anything, any adjacent spot. So I can go ahead and do that to move. I could scatter, which you can see when you're viewing these, you're viewing it from this angle right here where your keep is. So if I want to slant right, obviously that shows I can slant right. I can move over here. Another easy way if you have trouble is you can see that there is a full side connected. So treat this as your spot that you're in, and there is a full side that's fully connected to you right there. So you're going to slant right. Same concept with here. It actually says slant right in this one. This one said scatter. But you're trying to go to the slant right. Whereas if you wanted to go straight, straight would actually not be a full side connected. You're going to go straight, because this is your viewpoint from over here. So to accomplish that, again, you could gain ground as always, where you can go wherever, adjacent. You could proceed, which is a straight. You can point it like this if that helps you. So you can move there. Or you can maneuver, which also is a straight up and down. So you hold it there, you can go straight. So that I just want to go over movement in Maul Peak before I move on now to the first Guardian. All right, so just as in Skull Hollow, you actually have a difficulty rating. I'm going to start with the most difficult to show you it's not so bad. So 3 stars means it is the most difficult they can get. You have 1 star in here. You have 2 stars in the box as well currently. Again, this is prototype, so things can change, but right now this is how it is. We have this one here, which is 2 characters, Trovak and Gnarl. So we're going to go ahead and pull those out. I've already seen them, but I will let you see what's in the box here. We can fairly certain that these are not prototype. Those are very chunky meeples that we're used to with Skull Hollow even. They're both going to go in the layer as you'd expect. Then we have their own deck of cards. They actually have, since they're a little more complex, they have a rules queue right here and their own deck right there. So as always, your opponent is going to get that card to let them know what are some actions that these characters can do. Interesting thing about these is that they have unique actions. So you can see Trovak's actions right here. You can see Gnarl's actions right here, and these are shared actions that either one can do. Also, when you jump on to them, they have 2 different characters on this board. So you could, if they're in a spot that's adjacent, it makes sense that if you're over here attacking the rush, you can actually jump to the first spot on the other character if they are actually in the same ground space. Makes perfect sense. I love that. So just keep that in mind. Different variability there. All right, now let's go over a little bit of the rules here. When you play a card that has 2 moves, so let's show that. One of those moves will be to one character and the other to the other character. Here's an example of that. Okay, easy enough. When one Guardian enters the same ground space as the other, gain 1 power. During the cleanup phase, you may allocate power to both Guardians. You can see the spots for their power up here. This is their pool, and this is their win condition actually right here, which has to do with what I just said about getting these power tokens. So you're going to want to get those power tokens and make them come together as often as possible, because you are going to get power tokens, which is fill the power track with 9 spent power cubes. So you want to acquire power cubes, get them in the queue, and spend them to get them down here. Now, the hero can spend 2 raids to get rid of these, but that is a win condition. If you can keep getting power cubes and spending them, it will be difficult for your opponent to keep up with stopping you getting these power cubes. So it's one method of victory. Next, you can only spend the power from the characters for their unique actions. You cannot spend them for their shared actions or a move action. So we ignore these for their power. It has to be their unique actions that you spend them on based on who has the power. Next, when you spend a power, add it to the power track instead of the supply, as you would imagine. Here we got, when the Guardian receives its last wound, it is exhausted. So you're going to go ahead and flip it on Leonot's back. and remove any power cubes allocated to that guardian. When a wound is removed from an exhausted guardian, it is revived, and you can stand its figure back upright. When both guardians are the same, I mentioned this, and they're the same ground unit, they're going to go ahead and leap. You can go ahead and leap if they're in the same ground. You can leap from one to the other. And I also mentioned the last part too, where a hero can spend 2 rage at any time on their turn to remove 1 power from their power track over here. So those are the special rules. Let's go over some of their actions. All right, let's take a close look here. You can pause this if you would like at the actions on this Guardian's board right here. I go over them really briefly. Command to deal a wound to Gnarl's ground space. You can see they actually have unique actions that are attributed to one of the characters, and then a shared action that either one can perform. So it's interesting. Wind Blast right there. It's similar to a shake action to get players off of spots on the board. Beckon to move around Gnarl to the Trovak's spot, and moving Gnarl again to a surrounding spot, dealing damage to heroes in the ground space. And shared actions, you might be familiar with these. Mend to basically heal a wound on either character, so they're shared. And prepare already. That's one of the basic ones that all the Guardians have. There you go, and let's move on to the next one. All right, Veblyn. Let's do that. We got a spider. Check out that one. Wow, that's mean. All right, that's gonna go to your lair. We got some spider webs here. Gonna spin up some webs and weave some folks. Try to trap them in our lair. You can see our win condition right there. Have 3 hero units in our lair. So I'm gonna get all these out. We're gonna start the game with 2 of them in the lair, which is great because we're trying to send people there, and it's harder to get out when there's more of these spun up in your lair. So these will all go in your queue. And I will mention that these webs do have a hit point of 1, so heroes can eliminate these webs or send them back to your spot here for a melee or magic. And it says that right there as a reminder. You can use melee or magic. The heroes can do that to get rid of those. Otherwise, they'll have to discard cards in their hand to get to even move out of those spots. Makes it real difficult. And your win condition, again, is at the end of your turn to have 3 hero units in your lair at your turn. Once it's your turn, you got to have that. And that's important in a 4-player game more so than anything else when I say it's your turn, because you can have a teammate get an opponent in there, but it won't matter until it's your turn. So they have a way to fight out. I'll just bring that up because it's a 4-player and it's a little different in 4 players. So in 2 players, it's pretty straightforward. All right, so let's look at some of their setup here. I mentioned the 2 webs. During the hero's turn, when a unit leaves a ground space, like I mentioned, they will have to discard 1 random card per web token. So that can really hurt you. You don't get to pick. It's random. If there's more web tokens, there's more cards you have to lose. So that's something to consider when you want to do the spin action and place web tokens out there. It can make it really annoying for the opponents. All right, and I mentioned that they have 1 hit marker. So let's go over some actions here. Get rid of these. Take a look at the board. Bite. That's dealing wounds to their ground space. If there's at least 1 web token on the ground space, you can do 2 wounds. So you're incentivized again to spin. Spin is where you can create those web tokens in surrounding ground spaces. So you can see it's pretty liberal with how you can do that. It's basically any of those 6, 7, 8 spots, all surrounding you. Weave is how you can move a hero from there to the layer space. That, again, your win condition. So you're going to want to weave them, throw them in there. So spin them and weave them. Skitter. Remove a hero from your character right there. And then they're going to go to the ground space with a web token if possible. If that skitter is disabled, we're going to decrease our hand size. Again, if we were to go ahead and get that skitter back, we would follow suit and increase our hand size back. Mystify, remove 1 rage from the hero player to gain 1 power. Very cool. When you see that your opponent has some rage, you can go ahead and do that. That's awesome. You can go ahead and get some power just from doing that. Mystify action. Men you're familiar with. Prepare you're familiar with. There you go. That's Veblyn. Key is to, again, spin them and weave them. Let's go. All right, we're moving on to Quagra. Quagra is a 2-star character here. Let's get their stuff out of the box. There you go. Nice purple meeple with a bunch of heads right there biting. Boom. Layer. Let's do this. You're going to notice you have some cards that actually say Grizzar on them, and you got the Foxens. If you're playing a 4-player, the Foxes will be introduced. Those are confusion cards, and here is the card we actually give to them to show our actions as usual. Hand that over to your opponent. Now these confusion cards, our goal is to deplete entire confusion deck. Now we can do that. We're going to go over the 2-player game. With the 4-player game, same concept, just now you can give this to the Foxen character if they are playing in our 4-player game. But we're going to assume we're playing a 2-player game. We're trying to get these confusions to clog up your opponent's deck. So we're going to set these over here. We can send them whichever way we want. Just to know that is our win condition to get rid of all these. If we do, we immediately win. All right, so let's go over some actions here. Got some cards. All right. Compel. Well, you get to put them on a spell. You can see the animation there. You can move the hero character 1 space in any direction. Or I can move a hero from Quagra to a place in Quadra's ground space. Quagra. I gotta remember that. Quagra. What am I saying? Quandra? I don't know what I'm saying. Confuse. Add 1 card from the confusion deck to the hero player's discard pile. Cannot be targeted by magic items. Okay? So go ahead and take one of these, put it in your opponent's discard. Got it. Sabotage, deal a wound. Okay, that's a wound one. Or you can deal a wound to all banded hero units. Cool. Banded hero units, if you don't remember, are pairs. So a lot of times in Skull Hollow, the Foxen character would band, so they wouldn't get hurt, because the losing condition in Skull Hollow was to kill the Foxen leader. Well, they would band, and you would have to defeat the person they were banded with before you can even touch that Foxen hero, for instance. All right, extract. Force a hero player to discard 1 random card per hero unit in Quadra's ground space. So this is really cool. When I played it, there was a time when there were 4 heroes in 1 spot, and I can just hand them these 4 cards. Now, keep in mind, they can spend an action to get rid of every single one of these in their hand. So if I gave them 4, they can spend 1 action to get rid of all 4, but you know what that means? They have 1 card left for their turn. So they'll have to spend actions drawing cards or something like that, because that is a ton of cards to get in your hand. You can spend all 5 if there are 5 people, and all of a sudden they don't have anything to do. They can just draw cards and try to fight that off. So they're really incentivized, the heroes are, to separate their people, which could help you because then they're not banded. All right, core, you can see that right here on your board. You actually cannot jump past that. I mean, there are characters that can kind of jump where they want when you're a when you're a Grizzar tribe, but a Grizzar, you cannot jump past the core. You got to go ahead and take damage there. You got to work on that first before you can move on to these cards. And that's what it's saying right here. And you're familiar with Mend and Prepare. So again, and with Quagra, you are trying to get rid of these confusion cards to your opponent. Or just go ahead and eliminate them, whatever you decide. All right, 1 more to go. Okay, Saboso, I'm going to do a little differently because this was a prototype, and here is the updated version of their player board I'm showing you on the screen. So let's go over. They have a win condition here to have 4 hero units trapped in a cell location. The cell location is actually a spot on their board, basically like a little prison. You're just keeping them there. You can win by having 4 heroes in that cell location. And of course, you can have just win by eliminating all the characters just like any other Guardian. All right, so some actions here. We got a Quake action, which is all about doing wounds to these heroes. The Frost action is, you're giving them Shiver tokens. So you start with these 5 Shiver tokens that you can use, and Frosting is giving that Shiver token to a hero unit in a surrounding ground space. So if there's more heroes than 1 there, you can just have to pick which one you're targeting. All right, next we have Trap. So we can move hero units with a Shiver token to that sell spot, part of the win condition. Then we remove all Shiver tokens from that hero unit. So they are locked and loaded. Part of the win condition. They're 25% there if you go ahead and do that Trap action. The Whack action is removing a hero unit from their player board. That's Saboso, and I'm sorry if I butcher these names. Saboso is what I'm calling them. Saboso, not sure. And place it in a surrounding ground space. So removing them, placing them in surrounding ground space. If there's at least one other hero unit in that ground space, you're going to add a Shiver token to a hero unit in that ground space. And again, we have a Sell that will be mentioned right in the middle. And the Mend you're familiar with, the Prepare you're familiar with. At the end of a hero's turn, they can remove one Shiver token from each hero unit, so it only lasts once per, so they can remove one. If you happen to put more than one, well, they have to, one at a time they can remove. And hero units with Shiver tokens cannot take actions or use abilities.
All right, we are back. Thank you, Nick, for the great overview of all the characters available in this game.
Thank you.
Oh, I try. So, you know, how did we come to this? How did we end up with Maul Peak in our possession here? And how'd you hear of it?
First heard of it, Andrew on our channel mentioned it because we did a list, a top 10 of our underappreciated game. Underappreciated games for me, that was my number one. I mean, we did a combined list, but it was my number one, Skull Hollow. So he mentioned that Maul Peak was going to come out. I hadn't actually heard of it. When we put that out, I don't know if it was January or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was coming out. I was like, well, that's an insta-buy for me. Insta-back because I love Skull Hollow. And also, that's my number one two-player only game. It's right there with all the other two-player only games. We play a lot of two-player only. For me to say that's my number one, that's pretty high praise for me.
That's a majority of our gaming is done with 2 players. We also do 4-player games, and that leads us to our next thing about what's great about Maul Peak is if you've played Skull Hollow, not only can you bypass a lot of the rules that you see in the rule book, but there's a specific sections that are highlighted that say if you've played Skull Hollow, don't need to read this, you can just skip ahead. So that's really great that right away with the experience you have from Skull Hollow, you can build on that with Maul Peak.
Really.
And what's even better is to combine the games. And would you say that you appreciate that with that they didn't, replace the game?
Yeah, and there are so many great two-player games that we have that we've just kind of, the only negative thing is I wish I can share those with other people while I play.
Yeah.
I think of Caper. I would love to share that with more people. Now this lets us do it finally. Skull Hollow I can play with Maul Peak as a 4-player game, which is super cool, super cool.
Yeah, it doesn't make the Skull Hollow purchase obsolete. So many times when we get another game in the collection, it kind of makes other games sell-worthy, or games that we kind of kick them out of the collection.
Some of our favorite games. The Crew is one of those games that kind of, you don't really need the first one once you get the second one, and that was what I was afraid of, that I might be obsolete. You might not have a purpose for Skull Hollow. Happy to report there is an amazing purpose for both of the games, so I'm so happy about that. Like, I was smiling the whole time I was playing this game.
Yeah, and not only can you combine them to make a 4-player game or a 3-player game to go beyond 2, but you can also mix and match the maps. So if you decide that you want to play the Foxen against some of the Maul Peak Guardians, you can do that, which is really great because it makes your purchase of Skull Hollow even more valuable.
It's insane to me that they were able to balance that. I think that Ed and Keith were just really focused during the pandemic and just really hammered out the balancing of this. And this was a huge task to make all these variables and to not break the game. Very delicate. I cannot believe how much work had to go into this. Yes, they had the tablet, the template in order to make this game happen. That template was there, but just the balancing, the asymmetry in all these characters. That is really a masterclass in what they did with Maul Peak. I can't imagine how many hours and trials and playtests they had to do to make this work. I'm totally enamored with that aspect.
Oh yeah, totally. When you think about how tight this game is in comparison to Skull Hollow, I found that this game, the ages are a little bit higher. Skull Hollow is 8 and up. This one, they actually graduated up to a 12 and up game. Okay. And in that regard, I think that that's fair because with Maul Peak, depending on who you play with in your game group, or the ages that you play with, if you're playing with a child or with a significant other or a friend, I do think that Maul Peak is a little bit more challenging in a tighter game where it really felt like anyone could really win. Whereas I know Skull Hollow has that element as well, and it's done well in that way. But with this one, it felt, you've got your Grizzar Heroes coming out. You are making meaningful decisions about, are you going to pay those rage tokens to put these guys out, and you can lose them.
They're not expendable like they were in Skull Hollow. And that's not a negative of Skull Hollow. That's just the way that played. These ones, the Grizzar, they are not expendable. You lose them, you lost them. They're done.
Yeah, so I think that with that in mind, perhaps you would want to use the Skull Hollow characters if you're playing with a younger demographic, whereas with the Maul Peak, it's not like they could never figure it out.
Right.
But I think that there's a little bit more forethought required with Maul Peak about the decisions that you make. So it could add a little bit of an extra layer of
I didn't see that, but I can see what you're saying now that you mention it. I didn't see it that way. I felt like the complexity was on par, but I can see what you're saying, that maybe a little bit more complex, just maybe a little bit. And the game was a little tighter. You felt it just a little bit again because they managed to make it more tight. Because I thought Skull Hollow was really tight.
That's what I mean. I didn't want to allude that the other one
it's just
was.
I'm not sure how they did it, but it felt like this was even more like in balance. Like this is getting. There's no runaway leaders here. Not really.
And the art done by Dustin is very consistent with Skull Hollow. It's the same art, same artist, but it's a completely different sort of art style where they're in a different season. Like it's still got the cute depictions of the little meeples getting, destroyed, or every action has adorable artwork that you'll just love. And the cards are well done. The component quality with the big chunky meeple. Everyone loves the big chunky meeples.
Definitely.
So that is a big, if you enjoy component quality
and
the presence that this game brings to the table, then this is a winner for you as well for that.
Yeah, and I really can't stress enough the work that they did with, now they have new win conditions, all super interesting. I'm not sure how they came up with all these, but all these win conditions they added, totally unique characters. The mind of these guys that they had to spend to make this work is really impressive, and it doesn't feel like anything this game is tacked on. They didn't get lazy anywhere. So it's just a masterpiece to me that falls in line with Skull Hollow, which is hard to do. I thought for sure it would be a little bit lesser because I love Skull Hollow so much. I'm like, it's not gonna match that. Lower my expectations. It matches it, and it does it so well. I can't believe it. It's one that easily owned both. I don't see any reason, which I'm super excited to own both. I don't have to get rid of. Oh, what a waste now. Skull Hollow's dead, just like the crew did to me. And the crew was so high on my list, and now it's like nothing. It's dead to me because they came out with a new crew that was better. That didn't happen here. I'm so happy.
Always great when you have longevity in games, and I think that if you've already supported Skull Hollow, if you already have it in your collection, I think it's a no-brainer to get Maul Peak in there as well. It's great that the Kickstarter will actually give you the opportunity to back both games at the same time, so you don't have to go find Skull Hollow.
Yeah, really the only thing bad about that, I guess, if you have a ton of games now, because you can't combine the boxes really, so you're going to have two boxes. The insert's so good that I wouldn't want to get rid of that insert. So I guess you have a storage problem, which we kind of do. We get to have two boxes for two games that just work really well together. And if you really want to get rid of the insert, but I think the insert's just too good to get rid of. I like the way that everything fits in there. It'd be hard to do, but yeah, if you're not attached to that insert, I guess you can combine the boxes. I wouldn't. I'm going to keep both on our shelves.
Yeah, they did a really great job of the inserts, so you don't want to be throwing those away, I think. So. And this is another winner for Pencil First. As far as we're concerned, it's an insta-back.
Home run.
Thank you so much for watching this Kickstarter preview. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like, thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel for more great Kickstarter previews. We'll see you next time.
Adios, amigos.
Bye.